Imagine a car that never needs gas, a car that could drive for 100 years on a single tank of nuclear fuel. It sounds like science fiction, but back in 1958, it was very real. Ford engineers designed a futuristic vehicle powered by a miniature nuclear reactor, promising limitless energy and zero emissions. They called it the Ford Nucleon. It was bold, visionary, and absolutely insane. So, why did the dream of the nuclear car just disappear? Was it the technology? The safety concerns? Or was it something much deeper? A reflection of how our hopes for the atomic future collided with cold, hard reality. This is the forgotten story of the nuclear-powered car Ford actually designed, and why humanity decided the open road shouldn't run on uranium. The 1950s were an age of boundless optimism and fear. The atomic bomb had ended World War II, and suddenly, nuclear power seemed to promise everything. Governments were building nuclear-powered submarines, ships, and even aircraft concepts. To the public, atomic energy wasn't just about war. It was the future of peace, progress, and convenience. If nuclear power could run a city or a battleship, why not a car? So, in 1958, Ford Motor Company unveiled something truly radical, a concept called the Ford Nucleon. It was sleek, silver, and looked like it drove straight out of a sci-fi comic. Behind the passenger cabin sat a small nuclear reactor module, designed to power an onboard steam turbine that would drive the wheels. The car of the future, Ford said, wouldn't need gas stations, just nuclear refueling stations every 5,000 miles. Now the idea wasn't completely absurd, at least not on paper. The Nucleon would use uranium-235 fuel rods to heat a working fluid, creating steam to spin a turbine generator, very similar to how nuclear submarines worked. In theory, it could travel for decades without refueling. No tailpipe emissions, no gasoline, just clean, continuous energy. To the engineers of the atomic age, it sounded like a revolution. But there was one small problem. Actually, several enormous ones. First, radiation. You can exactly park a reactor next to a kindergarten and call it family safe. Second, the weight. A reactor powerful enough to move a car would need tons of shielding, lead, boron, or heavy water, just to protect passengers. That would make the Nucleon weigh as much as a tank. And third, the roads. Even the slightest crash could turn your daily commute into a Chernobyl on wheels. When Ford unveiled the Nucleon at an auto show, the public went wild. To many, it represented the future, a symbol of how far technology could go when paired with imagination. Magazines and newspapers ran stories with headlines like, "The car that runs forever," and "Atomic power in every garage." But behind the flashy headlines, scientists were skeptical and terrified. Nuclear energy was still largely experimental outside of massive, controlled reactors. The idea of thousands of miniature atomic engines rolling through cities sounded like a nightmare scenario. Imagine a fender bender on the freeway, and suddenly, you're irradiating half of downtown Detroit. The military was already struggling with radiation control on its naval reactors. A mass-market civilian car? It was unthinkable. Still, Ford kept the concept alive, at least as a technological vision. By the 1960s, the world's love affair with atomic energy began to fade. The dangers of radiation, the complexity of dealing with nuclear waste, and a series of nuclear test accidents changed public opinion. And for Ford, the math just didn't add up. Building a car that needed so much radiation shielding was far too expensive. The infrastructure to refuel atomic cars didn't exist, and regulations for transporting fissile materials were becoming stricter. Meanwhile, gasoline was cheap, oil was plentiful, and internal combustion engines were improving rapidly. The dream of a nuclear car faded quietly into history. Ford never even built a working prototype, only a scale model. It remains on display today in the Henry Ford Museum, a relic of an era when anything seemed possible. But the Ford Nucleon wasn't a failure. It was a reflection of how bold imagination can outpace practical reality. Its legacy helped shape how engineers approached energy efficiency and safety. It forced researchers to confront the limits of miniaturizing nuclear reactors and inspired a generation of scientists to ask, how do we make clean energy safe and sustainable? In a strange way, the Nucleon was a distant ancestor of the electric car revolution. It was a symbol of freedom from fossil fuels long before Elon Musk or Tesla. The difference? Today's fuel is stored in lithium batteries instead of uranium rods. It's the same dream, just with a much safer power source. Today, the idea of nuclear-powered transportation isn't completely dead. It's just moved to a different scale. We still use nuclear energy to power submarines, icebreakers, and even deep space probes. NASA's Voyager spacecraft, for example, runs on a nuclear generator that's been active for nearly 50 years. And in the 21st century, companies are developing small modular reactors, compact, safe versions that could one day power entire cities or even space colonies. But a nuclear-powered family sedan? That dream belongs to the atomic age, a time when optimism burned as brightly as a reactor core, and the future was imagined in glowing neon. The Ford Nucleon was never meant to drive down Main Street. It was a vision, a reminder that sometimes progress means learning where not to go. So, what would the world look like today if nuclear cars had become real? Maybe faster, maybe cleaner, but definitely more dangerous. The Ford Nucleon reminds us that in the race toward the future, not every idea is meant to hit the road. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this trip into the atomic past, don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about the future that never was.